everybody and welcome to this session on Json. So if you have not heard about Json, then let me tell you that Json has become almost the de facto standard to exchange data in modern web, in most of the cases. So whenever there is a client and a server uh, running somewhere in the cloud, then Json is the default format via which data is normally sent from the server to the client and also sometimes from the client to the server. So that is why it is very important to understand the JSON format, because it will be most used by you if you are a web programmer. So what is JSON? JSON, as I already mentioned, is a data format. It's basically like a key value pair, as you can see on the right hand side. It's a key value pair where the key denotes some entity name and the value is basically the value of that entity. And it's of course an ASCII data format because it's text, but although being text, it is actually much lightweight, and the key is always string, but the value can be either a string or a number or a boolean, or it can also be a nested JSON or an array, and we will see example of such in the subsequent slides. But before we go there, let us take a look at this JSON which is listed here. So this JSON, you can think of it as basically a data which describes a person. So it describes the name, the age, the gender, the country, and the profession of that person. So here we can see that the key of each attribute or each property of the JSON is a string, but the value of 4 a string, but the value of 1 is a number. So that is perfectly possible, as I mentioned, that the value of a JSON property can be a string or a number or a boolean, or can be even a JSON. So let us see a JSON with a little bit more complexity, where one value can be even a nested JSON. Like say for example, if we think of that same user JSON, where we also want to share the educational aspects of the user, the educational qualifications of the user. And under educational qualifications, we might want to share his different levels of education, like his school education, his bachelor's, master's, or any other accolades. And each of them can come basically as a key value pair. So here we can see that within a JSON, for the property named education, we have the value also as a JSON. So it's a nested JSON. And it's a very common scenario for our real life JSON. Here is an example of another JSON when we see an array. So we extend that same JSON object which represents the person Peter. Now, in addition to the educational qualifications that we listed, we might also want to add the employment history of the same person. And we can add it as basically as an array, which means because the person can have multiple employments, can have multiple employers. So every single employment will be one element of the array. And each array element again is a valid JSON. So this is another example where we see that the value of a JSON is an array of nested JSON. So once again, JSON is a data format where the key is always string, the value can be string, number, or can be even a nested JSON, or can be an array of JSON. So it basically represents some kind of data. Here, for example, the user data which is sent from the server to the client. Here is an example of another JSON. Suppose for some particular server, the response is a list of users. So here we have a list of users whose name, age, and gender are present in each JSON element. So here, as we can see, that the outside JSON itself is an array. And this array has got 3 elements, and each element represents a user object, and within each element, it is a valid JSON within each element. Like every single JSON, as you can see here, has 3 attributes: name, age, and gender. So this is also another example of a perfectly valid and real world like JSON. Now let us try to understand why JSON is so popular. First and foremost, as you could see, that it's very simple, and I would also say it's very intuitive. So you can actually understand, looking at the JSON data what it actually represents. It does not have any redundant or any additional verbosity, unlike XML. Like it does not need to have any closing tags or like that. So that is why it, although being a text format, it's much lightweight. And most importantly, since JSON had become so popular since its advent in 2006, I think, all the popular programming languages have very good support for JSON. Some have out-of-the-box support for JSON, and some other programming languages have multiple libraries which help in JSON parsing. So now we are going to see how we can parse JSON in JavaScript. So please go to my blog, which is also mentioned in the description, and copy paste this part, which is a perfectly valid JavaScript code which can parse a JSON, which is this JSON, this same user JSON. So I will go from here, I will go to more tools, developer tools, and I will go to console and then try to run the JavaScript. So this is the user object, and then I will do a JSON.parse, and then I will do a console log, and you can see that with this JavaScript statements, it has been able to parse the JSON and then also extract the country from that user, which is the Netherlands in this case. So this is how it is possible to actually extract fields from JSON in JavaScript without using any external library directly in the browser. Now we will see a very simple Python program which does the same thing. And you will get the copy of the Python code also in my blog post. Now we will see how we can run a similar code in Python to extract certain properties from a JSON. You can also find the similar code snippet from my blog. So just copy paste the code and create a file named json-parser.py and just run it with, if you have Python installed in your machine, and see, it can also extract the country from there. So it's very similar, the language is different. So that's it. Thank you for your patience listening, and I hope that the session was useful. And I would also request you to try the hands-on. So copy paste the JavaScript code at least and run it in your Chrome browser window, Chrome console, because that's the easiest to run. It does not require you to install anything. And get a feel of JSON. Try out with different types of JSON. And yeah, please comment to my blog and to my YouTube channel. And if you really like this session, please go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel, which would motivate me.